Commander Elias Ward stepped down from the shuttle ramp and felt the smooth, glass-like surface of the Solara IX Royal landing platform beneath his boots. The entire platform glowed faintly with blue light, almost as if the ground itself was alive. Huge crystal towers surrounded him, each one shining with colors that changed like slow-moving stars. Even after months of traveling through alien space, Elias could not deny the same feeling that returned every time. Humans still seemed small in a galaxy so full of ancient powers and civilizations. But today was different. Today, he wasn't here as a simple visitor. He was the first human ever invited to the triumvirate court of Solara IX, and he was the first outsider to complete what the Solaris people called the Trial of Valor, a challenge designed to test strength, intelligence, and resolve. Elias had not expected to pass it. He had not even expected to survive it. Yet here he was. He glanced to his left where two Solaris guards, both at least 7 feet tall, with shining white armor and glowing blue eyes, stood completely still. They didn't blink. He wasn't sure they even breathed. The Solaris were not robots, but they were enhanced so heavily with genetic augmentation and nanotech implants that humans often called them living sculptures. Their faces were perfect, their bodies flawless, and their expressions unreadable. A smaller Solaris approached him, though smaller only by their standards. She was still taller than Elias, clad in flowing silver robes. She carried a staff that looked like it was sculpted from starlight itself. "Commander Elias Ward," she said, her voice calm and musical. "The Queen awaits you inside the Hall of Judgment. You are to follow me. Do not speak unless addressed, and do not step off the guiding path." Elias nodded. Understood. She turned, and he followed. The doors ahead were massive, 20 times the height of a human. They opened silently, not sliding but unfolding like petals of a mechanical flower. Elias stepped inside and felt swallowed by the vastness of the hall. The Hall of Judgment looked more like a cathedral built by cosmic beings. The ceiling was so high, it disappeared into shadows. Walls of crystalline panels reflected every movement, with shimmering patterns. And in the center of the hall sat an elevated circular platform, floating slightly above the ground. On that platform sat Queen Valoria. Elias had seen her only once before, briefly, during the trial's final stage. But seeing her now, seated upon her throne of glowing crystal, was a different experience entirely. Her presence felt like standing before a star, dangerous, beautiful, and impossible to ignore. She wore armor that looked grown rather than forged, made of white metal that pulsed faintly with gold. Her hair, long and silver, flowed like liquid light. Her eyes, bright violet, carried both power and exhaustion. Around her stood the triumvirate council, high-ranking Solaris nobles who ruled beside her. Their gazes were sharp, judging every tiny detail of the human who dared to stand in their sacred hall. "Commander Elias Ward of Humanity," Queen Valoria said, her voice echoing throughout the chamber. "You have completed the trial of valor. As per our ancient law, you have earned the right of selection." Elias stood tall. "I am honored, Your Majesty." Whispers rippled through the hall, but Valoria held up her hand, and silence fell instantly. "For the first time in 5 centuries, she continued, an outsider has succeeded. And so tradition demands that you be offered a choice. You may select one of 3 Solaris envoys to act as your companion, guide, and political ally." Elias tried not to shift or show discomfort. He knew this ritual was symbolic, a type of alliance bond meant to officially tie his people to the Solaris Empire. But the idea of choosing a person made him uneasy. Humans didn't see relationships that way. Still, he kept his expression steady. Negotiation required patience. A guard struck the ground with his spear, and 3 women stepped forward. The first envoy wore sleek armor marked with red lines. She was tall, sharp-featured, and had the unmistakable stance of a trained warrior. She observed Elias with a curious tilt of her head, as if studying a rare creature. The second envoy wore robes decorated with symbols Elias couldn't read. Her eyes were softer, her expression warm. She held no weapon and radiated the calm confidence of a diplomat or scholar. The third envoy was neither armored nor robed. She wore a uniform that suggested tactical intelligence. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes measured everything, Elias included. "These three have offered themselves to the right," Valoria explained. "Each possesses skills, power, and loyalty. Choose one, and she will serve as your ally and representative in our empire." Elias looked at each envoy respectfully. They all appeared impressive, skilled, almost intimidating. But something in his chest felt unsettled. He didn't want to choose any of them, not because they weren't worthy, far from it, but because the ritual itself seemed unfair. They were individuals with lives, duties, and goals. Choosing one felt like accepting a gift that wasn't his to take. But this was an alien culture with strict traditions. Breaking one could be dangerous. One wrong step could ruin the fragile chance for peace between their species. Queen Valoria watched him, her expression unreadable. She expected him to choose. Everyone did. Elias inhaled slowly. Then he noticed something small, but important. The queen's eyes. She looked tired, lonely, even. He suddenly remembered what Solaris historians had told him. The queen was not simply a ruler. She was a symbol bound by centuries of expectation. She had to remain perfect, untouchable, obedient to the unchanging laws of her people. The envoys had choices. They volunteered. But the queen, she lived a life already chosen for her. And perhaps, Elias thought, she had never once been asked what she wanted. The hall waited, silent and breathless. Elias raised his hand. Hundreds of Solaris nobles leaned forward to hear his decision. His finger moved past the warrior envoy, past the diplomatic envoy, past the strategist envoy, and stopped, pointing directly at Queen Valoria. The hall erupted in shock. Gasps echoed like thunder. A council member shouted something in their native language, his voice sharp with outrage. Another stepped forward, as if ready to restrain Elias. The guard beside the queen tightened his grip on his spear. Valoria herself did not move at first. Her expression didn't change. It was as if she had turned to stone. Elias kept his voice calm. "I choose her." The hall shook with uproar. Some Solaris shouted in disbelief. Others whispered fiercely. A few simply stared at Elias, as if he had spoken blasphemy. "You dare?" one counselor thundered. "The right forbids choosing the queen. She is above selection." Elias's heart pounded, but he kept his face steady. "You said to choose someone worthy of alliance. I see no one more worthy than the one who leads you." "That is not the purpose of the right," another counselor snapped. "I understand your tradition," Elias replied softly. "But I will not choose someone who does not choose themselves. And I will not pretend that partnership can be formed by ritual alone." The hall fell into tense silence. Queen Valoria finally lifted her hand. The uproar ceased instantly. Her gaze fixed on Elias with piercing intensity. "Why?" she asked. The single word echoed like a bell. Elias swallowed. "Because leadership deserves respect. Because your people follow you for a reason. And because if humanity is to form a real alliance with Solaris, it should be done by speaking to the one who truly holds the burden of their future." Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in thought. Her fingers tightened around the arm of her throne. "Do you realize what you have done?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Elias answered. "I challenged a tradition I don't fully understand. But I did it with respect. And I meant no offense." The queen stood from her throne. The movement was slow, graceful, and powerful. The crystals of her armor shifted with a soft hum. She descended the platform step by step. Every Solaris in the hall held their breath. Even the guards looked uncertain. Elias remained still as she approached. When she stood before him, she was close enough that he could see the faint glow of nanotech patterns running beneath her skin. She studied him for a long moment. Her expression remained unreadable. But her eyes held questions. Finally, she spoke. "Your boldness is unsettling," she said softly. "Your defiance is dangerous. But your honesty—" She paused, almost reluctantly. "Your honesty is rare." Elias felt a weight lift from his chest. She wasn't angry, at least. Not in the way the council feared. Queen Valoria turned away from him and addressed the hall. "The human has made his choice," she said. "According to tradition, the right demands acknowledgement." A counselor stepped forward, horrified. "Your Majesty, the right forbids." "Silence," she said. The counselor froze. Valoria looked back at Elias. "This choice will not be accepted," she said. "But it will not be punished. The human has shown us something unusual. Something worth considering." Elias released the breath he had been holding. The queen lifted her chin. "For now, the right is suspended until the council reconvenes. Commander Elias Ward, you will remain as guest of the court. I will speak with you privately at dawn." Elias nodded. "I'll be ready." Valoria turned, her silver hair flowing behind her like a trail of light. As she walked away, the hall buzzed with whispers, some fearful, some angry, some curious. Elias stood alone in the center, knowing one thing with certainty. He had just changed something in the Solaris Empire, something important, and it wasn't finished yet. The night on Solara IX was never dark. Even with no sun in the sky, the planet glowed softly, lit by floating crystal spheres and glowing trees that shimmered with pale blue light. Commander Elias Ward stood on the balcony of his assigned chamber, looking out at the endless city. Everything looked alive, moving with slow energy, singing with silent hums, but his mind wasn't calm like the view. He kept thinking about what happened in the Hall of Judgment. The Solaris nobles' angry faces, the Queen's unreadable eyes, his own bold action. He wondered if he had made a mistake, or if this was the only way to show them what humanity valued. A quiet sound pulled him from his thoughts. The door to his chamber opened with a soft chime, and a Solaris guard stepped inside. "Commander Ward," the guard said. His voice was deep and firm. "The Queen requests your presence." It was still dark outside. Dawn had not yet come. She had asked to meet him at dawn, but the summons had come early. Elias nodded, knowing he couldn't refuse. "Lead the way." They walked through a long hallway made of shining crystal plates. The walls lit up as they passed, adjusting their glow to Elias's presence. Solaris architecture always reacted to life. Nothing was dead or still here. They stopped at a tall door marked with golden lines shaped like constellations. "The Queen's private observatory," the guard said. Then he stepped aside. Elias took a breath and entered. The room was vast and circular. The ceiling was a massive transparent dome, revealing the night sky full of swirling cosmic clouds. Floating screens displayed star maps and ancient symbols. In the center stood Queen Valoria, dressed not in armor or ceremonial robes, but in a simple white suit, with faint glowing lines. She looked less like a distant ruler and more like a tired leader who had 1,000 worries on her shoulders. She did not turn around when he entered. "You are early," she said quietly. "Your guard summoned me. That means the council is already moving faster than expected." She finally turned, her violet eyes glowing gently. "I wish to speak before they interfere." Elias approached her slowly. "I meant no disrespect yesterday." Her expression softened only a little. "Disrespect was not what you gave. Confusion, perhaps. Discomfort, definitely. But not disrespect." He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Valoria walked to the edge of the dome, raising her hand. The glass lit up and turned into a view of the galaxy, showing multiple star systems swirling like bright fires. "Do you know what it means to be Queen of Solara?" she asked. "I can guess," Elias said. "Power, responsibility, expectation." Her gaze stayed on the stars. "Expectation," she repeated. "Yes. More than you can imagine. Every ruler before me followed the ancient laws exactly. No change. No questions. No choices of their own." She turned to him, her face calm but tired. "And yesterday, you asked me without words if I wanted to be chosen." Elias swallowed. "I wasn't trying to claim you." "I know," she said softly. "That is why it disturbed them. Not because you were bold, but because you saw me not as a symbol, but as a person." Elias lowered his eyes. He hadn't expected his gesture to carry that kind of weight. Valoria stepped closer, studying him with slow curiosity. "Tell me honestly, human. Why did you point at me?" Elias met her gaze. "Because an alliance should be built with the one who actually leads. I didn't want a symbolic partner. I wanted someone who chooses their own path. And you believed that someone would be me? From what I've seen," he said quietly, "you're the only one in that hall who might be willing to change things." Her lips curved slightly, not a smile, but something close. "You understand more than most outsiders ever have. And that is why the council fears you." "Fears me?" Elias blinked. "I have no power here." "Power is not always in weapons or armies," she replied. "Sometimes power is simply refusing to follow a script." She moved away, pressing her palm against a panel. A holographic table appeared, showing the council chamber. Several noble figures were already gathered, speaking in harsh tones. "They want to punish you," she said. "Not physically, but politically. They want you isolated, kept from influence." Elias frowned. "Because of a gesture?" "Because that gesture revealed their weakness." Valoria's voice turned low. "The council fears change. They fear outside ideas. They fear that I might support your perspective." He looked at her carefully. "Do you?" Her eyes paused on him, long enough that he wondered if he had gone too far. "Finally," she answered, "I support truth, and you spoke truth yesterday." Before Elias could say more, a loud chime echoed through the observatory. The council had arrived. Valoria straightened, her expression shifting back into her regal mask, calm, sharp, unreadable. "I must attend the emergency session," she said. "Walk beside me." Elias followed her through the long halls until they reached the Grand Council chamber. This room was darker, colder, designed for debates and decisions rather than ceremony. It had a circular table made of dark crystal, each seat glowing with the sigil of a noble house. As soon as Elias entered, several nobles rose to their feet. "This is unacceptable," one snapped. "He broke the right. He must be sent back to his world immediately," another argued. "Remove the human before he damages our traditions further. His disrespect cannot be tolerated." Valoria lifted her hand. Silence fell instantly. "The human did not disrespect us," she said firmly. "He acted according to his beliefs. And we are the ones who invited him into our tradition." One counselor slammed his hand on the table. "The right cannot be broken." Valoria looked directly at him. "Then perhaps the right must be re-examined." The entire chamber froze. A Solaris noble stared in disbelief. "Your Majesty, no queen has questioned the right in 1,000 years." "Then it is time," she replied simply. Elias watched all of this silently. He knew he couldn't speak unless addressed. He also knew that the queen was risking a great deal by defending him. Another noble pointed at Elias sharply. "Human, why did you do this?" Elias stepped forward, standing tall. "Because an alliance requires sincerity," he said. "Not formality. I respect your people deeply. But I cannot choose someone like a tool or a symbol. That is not alliance. That is ownership." Several nobles murmured angrily, but others looked thoughtful. "And you believe choosing our queen was better?" one asked suspiciously. "I didn't choose her," Elias said calmly. "I acknowledged her." The chamber quieted. Even Valoria turned her gaze toward him. The nobles stared, unsure what to make of his words. "I pointed at the one who actually decides the future of this empire," Elias continued. "Not to claim her, but to show that humans see leaders as partners, not prizes." Icy silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, one of the older nobles leaned back and nodded slowly. "There is logic in the human's view," he admitted. Another noble frowned. "Logic does not change tradition." Valoria stepped between them. "Tradition is not destroyed by questioning it. It is strengthened." A long debate followed, heated voices, harsh arguments, moments of tension so sharp the air felt electric. Elias watched quietly, understanding slowly that his gesture had opened a deep crack inside Solaris society. Some nobles supported reform. Others clung to the past with fear and stubbornness. After what felt like hours, Valoria raised her hand once more. "I have considered the arguments," she said. And my judgment is this: the human will remain. No punishment will be given. The right is suspended, not broken. And I will personally evaluate the nature of our alliance with humanity. Shockwaves moved through the council. You will meet with him privately? One noble asked, almost scandalized. Yes, Valoria answered. I will. The nobles looked at each other, trapped between anger and obedience. No one dared oppose her final decision. The session ended. When the doors sealed behind them, Elias let out a slow breath. He turned to the queen. You risked a lot for me. Valoria walked forward, her steps calm and steady. I did what I believed was necessary. You showed me something yesterday. Something our empire has not seen in centuries. He tilted his head slightly. What's that? Courage without arrogance, she replied. Strength without domination. Honesty without fear. She stopped in front of him. And I wish to understand more. Elias nodded once. Then I'll answer anything honestly. Her eyes softened, just a little. Good, she said. Because the real challenges begin now. Outside, the glowing city continued its quiet hum. But inside the queen's heart, and inside the empire itself, something had shifted, something important, something unstoppable. The following days passed with a strange mix of calm and tension. Commander Elias Ward remained inside the royal palace under protected guest status. But he knew the truth. He was being watched by everyone. Some Solaris nobles kept a careful eye on him, studying him as if he were a puzzle. Others avoided him, afraid his presence might disturb even more ancient rules. But Queen Valoria continued to meet with him every day. Their conversations grew deeper, more honest, and more serious. She asked questions that showed how truly curious she was about humanity, its history, its failures, its victories, and its strange ability to survive disasters that would destroy stronger civilizations. Elias found himself surprised by her. For someone who ruled an entire empire, she listened with real interest, instead of pretending to know everything. She wanted to understand humans, and Elias realized that she had no one she could speak to without fear. The nobles respected her, but they did not speak to her as a person, only as a symbol. One evening, Valoria asked, Do you think your people would trust an empire like ours? Elias thought for a moment. Humans trust action more than words. If they see your people willing to cooperate honestly, yes. If they see transparency instead of control, yes. But humans don't respond well to being ordered around. A small smile touched Valoria's face. Then, humanity and Solaris have more in common than I expected. Their meetings continued like this, peaceful, thoughtful, and strangely natural. Until the peace finally broke. It happened during a quiet morning. Elias was sitting in the palace training hall, practicing with a Solaris simulation device. It projected holographic enemies that adapted to his movements, testing speed and reflexes. He was in the middle of dodging an energy spear when alarms suddenly blared throughout the palace. Loud, sharp tones echoed everywhere. A Solaris guard sprinted into the hall. Commander Ward, you must come immediately. Elias grabbed his jacket. What happened? There is an attack. His blood went cold. An attack? By who? The Vorn Dominion. The name hit him like ice. He had heard rumors from Solaris historians, stories of machine conquerors who once nearly destroyed entire star clusters. They had vanished long ago. But apparently not completely. Elias followed the guard through the halls at a run. Solaris citizens moved in panicked waves, heading toward safe zones. Lights flashed red across the crystalline walls. When Elias reached the command center, the atmosphere was frantic. Solaris strategists stood at glowing platforms, shouting coordinates and orders. Star maps flickered with red indicators. On the center screen was a large, spiked metallic shape, cold, black, and terrifying. The Vorn, Queen Valoria, stood at the command table, armored and calm, her silver hair tied back. Even in crisis, she carried a quiet strength that steadied everyone. She turned when Elias approached. You arrived quickly. I heard the alarm, he said. Tell me what's happening. The strategist beside her tapped a panel. A holographic image expanded, showing dozens of Vorn ships emerging from a wormhole. A Vorn scouting fleet has entered our border territory, the strategist said. They are probing defenses. We believe this is a preparation for invasion. Elias frowned. How many ships? Ahead forces, 25 war carriers, support fleets, unknown. Elias understood enough about alien warfare to know that 25 carriers were bad, very bad. Valoria turned to Elias. I need your perspective. Humanity has survived wars against unpredictable enemies. Solaris tactics are rigid. He nodded. Then let's think fast. He approached the holographic map and studied the positions. Vorn carriers moved in a straight, mechanical pattern, pure logic. No emotion. No fear. Your ships fight with formation discipline, Elias said. That's good for normal opponents. But the Vorn will predict every move. The strategist narrowed her eyes. Are you suggesting breaking formation? That is madness. Maybe, Elias said. But sometimes, madness is exactly what machines cannot predict. Valoria raised a hand to silence the strategist. Explain. Elias pointed to a narrow nebula nearby. If you send a small strike team here and hide in the nebula's radiation field, the Vorn won't expect such a small risk. They will send only minimal forces to investigate. If we can disable their communication nodes, the carriers will lose coordination. That is dangerous, another strategist muttered. Too dangerous. Everything is dangerous right now. Elias said calmly. But Solaris ships are strong. Humans have fought with weaker ones, and still won battles. Valoria nodded slowly. He is right. The unpredictable path may give us the advantage. The strategist bowed reluctantly. As you command, Your Majesty. Within minutes, orders were sent. Solaris ships launched from the royal docks, sleek vessels shaped like silver arrows, glowing with blue engines. A smaller team broke formation and headed toward the nebula, exactly as Elias suggested. But the Vorn responded faster than expected. The main screen flashed. More Vorn ships appeared, twice as many. The strategist gasped. A hidden fleet. Valoria's eyes hardened. So the Vorn have grown smarter. Elias clenched his jaw. Then we adapt. The battle erupted across the starfield. Solaris ships fired streams of golden energy, cutting through some Vorn units. But the Vorn responded with cold precision, launching wave after wave of drone swarms. Explosions lit the screen. One Solaris captain shouted over the comms, "We are overwhelmed, we need reinforcements." Valoria turned to Elias. What would humans do? Elias scanned the data quickly. The Vorn rely on perfect timing. Break their timing, and you break their strength. How? Valoria asked. Force chaos. He pointed at a cluster of asteroids near the battlefield. Detonate the asteroid cluster. The debris will scatter everywhere. The Vorn will recalculate every movement. That gives your ships time to escape the crossfire. Valoria didn't hesitate. Do it. Solaris engineers activated remote charges, and seconds later, the screen flashed with a massive explosion. Asteroids shattered into thousands of pieces, scattering in unpredictable patterns. Vorn drones collided with the debris, breaking their formations. The Solaris ships used the opening to reposition and regain control. Cheers erupted in the command center, but the Vorn still outnumbered them. And the wormhole pulsed again. More ships were coming. Valoria looked at Elias, her voice low. If they reach Solara IX, the planet will fall. Elias placed his hands on the holographic table. Then we stop them here. Another officer shouted, Your Majesty! Incoming transmission from the hidden fleet. A voice crackled through the speakers. We reached the nebula. We see the Vorn communication nodes. Preparing to strike. Elias quickly calculated the timing. If they destroy those nodes, the Vorn will lose tactical coordination. They'll become slower. Then let us hope they succeed, Valoria said softly. The next few minutes felt like hours. Everyone watched the small strike team approach the glowing Vorn relay towers. They were tall, metallic structures floating in space, emitting dark pulses of energy. The strike team fired. The first node exploded, then the second, then the third. Static filled the main screen as the Vorn fleet staggered, their formations breaking slightly. "Now," Elias said, "your ships need to strike fast. Before they adapt." Valoria gave the order, and Solaris ships surged with renewed fury. They moved not with rigid patterns, but with unpredictable maneuvers, zigzagging, diving, breaking into smaller groups. It was a style Solaris officers found uncomfortable, but Elias's influence was clear. The Vorn fleet, briefly stunned, began to fall back. "We're pushing them away," a Solaris officer shouted. But just as hope returned, the wormhole pulsed again, this time enormous, like a wound tearing open in space. A massive Vorn flagship emerged, dwarfing every other vessel. The strategist whispered, This is not a scouting mission. This is an invasion." Elias's throat tightened. The flagship alone could destroy a planet if ignored. Valoria stood straighter, her voice calm. "Commander Ward." "Commander Ward." He looked at her. "Yes, you have seen human wars. You understand desperate battles." Her eyes were firm, trusting. "Tell me how we survive this." He studied the massive ship. Its armor was too thick, its weapons too powerful. Then an idea formed, risky, reckless, but possible. "You need to overload the wormhole," Elias said. "If you destroy its anchor points, it will collapse and pull anything inside back with it, including Vorn ships." The strategist's face paled. "That could destroy half our fleet." "It's the only way," Elias said firmly. "Either you lose some ships, or you lose the whole empire." Valoria closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her decision was already made. "Prepare the overload sequence." The command center moved quickly. Solaris ships fired at the wormhole's glowing anchors, large structures that kept the portal stable. Vorn forces tried to defend them, but Solaris pilots pushed forward, sacrificing ships to hit the final anchor. The wormhole began to collapse. The massive Vorn flagship turned, trying to escape. It was too slow. A brilliant explosion filled the screen as the wormhole imploded, dragging Vorn ships into a spiral of collapsing energy. The flagship shattered in the vortex. Then, silence. The battlefield was empty. The Vorn were gone. Solaris officers cheered. Some fell to their knees in relief. Valoria exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing. She turned to Elias. "Your ideas saved us." He shook his head. "Your courage saved your people. You made the hard choices." Valoria stepped closer, her gaze steady. "Together," she said softly, "we saved them. Thank you." For the first time, Elias saw warmth in her eyes, not just respect, but something deeper. Something that made him feel they were no longer just guest and ruler. They were partners, allies, and maybe something even stronger was beginning to grow. But the victory had a cost. The Vorn attack was just the beginning. And deep in the galaxy, something stirred, something worse. The real war was coming. In the days that followed the great battle, Solara IX was filled with both celebration and fear. Celebrations came from the victory, from the fact that the Vorn fleet had been pushed back. But fear came from something deeper, something everyone could sense but no one wanted to say out loud. The Vorn attack was not random. It was not a test. It was the beginning of something larger. Commander Elias Ward walked through the palace gardens that night, trying to clear his mind. Strange, glowing plants lined the path, lighting his steps with soft colors. The air smelled faintly like warm rain, even though the sky above was completely clear. But Elias felt anything except peaceful. He knew the Vorn wouldn't stop. Machines didn't give up. They observed, calculated, improved. Next time, they would come stronger. Next time, they would come prepared for human unpredictability and Solaris strategy. His thoughts were interrupted by footsteps behind him. He turned to see Queen Valoria approaching, her robes moving like liquid silver under the garden lights. She stopped beside him and looked up at the artificial sky projected over the palace. "You look worried," she said quietly. Elias nodded. "The Vorn aren't done. The fleet we saw was just a fraction." "I know," she admitted. "The Council knows it too. They hide behind celebration because it is easier than accepting the truth." Elias studied her face. She looked calm, but he could see the exhaustion behind her eyes. "You haven't slept much," he said. She gave a soft laugh. "I am queen. Sleep is a luxury." He hesitated. "You don't have to carry everything alone." She turned her head toward him, her violet eyes warmer than he expected. "You have helped carry more than you know." He didn't reply. They walked through the garden in silence until they reached a small crystalline bridge crossing a stream of glowing water. Valoria finally spoke again. "The Council will meet tomorrow. They want to decide how we respond to the Vorn threat. Some want to close our borders entirely. Others want to strike first." Elias frowned. Both options seem dangerous. "Yes," she said. "One closes us off from allies who can help us. The other risks provoking a war we cannot win alone." Elias leaned on the railing of the bridge. "There's another option." Valoria looked at him, waiting. "An alliance," he continued. "A true alliance. Not symbolic. Humans and Solaris working together openly. Sharing technology. Sharing knowledge. Combining our strengths." She looked away, thinking. The water below them glowed softly, reflecting her face like a shimmering mirror. "The Council will not accept it easily," she said. "They fear change. They fear letting another species into our highest decisions." "They'll fear extinction more," Elias replied simply. Valoria took a slow breath. "You are right." Elias watched her silently. He knew the decision she had to make wasn't easy. A queen's choice affected millions. One wrong step could break the empire. But she had already shown she was willing to challenge tradition. She had already shown she trusted him. "For centuries," she said softly, "the Solaris Empire has survived by trusting old laws and ancient traditions. But the old ways may no longer protect us." Elias nodded. "Then new ways must be made." She looked at him with a steady gaze. "Will humanity stand with us?" He answered without hesitation. "Yes." Her expression softened. Not relief, something deeper, something that carried its own courage. "Then we will stand together," she said. The moment felt heavier than the air around them, filled with meaning. Elias realized this was the true alliance he had hoped for when he pointed at her in the Hall of Judgment. Not a ritual, not a symbol, but a decision made by two leaders, freely. Before either of them could say more, a guard ran into the garden. "Your Majesty!" "Commander Ward," the guard shouted. "You are needed in the council chamber immediately." Valoria's posture changed instantly. "What happened?" "There is breaking news from our deep space monitors. You must see it." They hurried back to the palace. When they entered the council chamber, it was chaotic. Holographic displays flickered everywhere. Nobles shouted instructions. Strategists looked pale and shaken. One counselor rushed to Valoria. "Your Majesty, the Vorn fleets are moving again." "How many?" Elias asked. The strategist's voice trembled. "We detected movement across 3 sectors, at least 70 ships." 70, Elias repeated. "That's nearly triple the last attack." Valoria stepped to the central table. "Is this a coordinated assault?" "It appears so," the strategist replied. "All fleets are moving towards Solaris-controlled space." Council members erupted into fearful debate. "We must seal our borders. We must prepare every defense. We must call every fleet back." Valoria raised her hand, stopping them. "No, we act with reason, not fear." She turned to Elias. "What does your human experience suggest?" Elias exhaled slowly. "The Vorn won't stop until they destroy every threat. The only way to fight a machine enemy is through cooperation. If Solaris fights alone, you'll lose. If humans fight alone, we'll lose." A counselor snapped. "So you want us to rely on them?" Elias answered calmly. "You need us. And we need you." Valoria nodded. The human is correct. We will form the alliance, he suggested. The council chamber exploded again. This is madness. He is manipulating you. You cannot break tradition so easily. Valoria's voice cut through the noise like a blade. I am not breaking tradition. I am saving Solaris. Silence fell. She looked at Elias. Prepare the message to your leaders. I will send my own envoys. We will build this alliance quietly, quickly, and strongly. Elias nodded. I'll handle it. Before he could leave, the strategist reported something else, something worse. Your Majesty, the Vorn are not only moving toward us. Valoria turned sharply. What do you mean? They are also moving toward human territory. Elias felt a chill run through him. How close? Within a few light years of your border systems. Elias clenched his fists. Then humanity is already in danger. Valoria looked at him, her eyes fierce. Then, we must act now. Later that night, after the council meeting, Valoria met Elias again in the observatory. The room felt quieter than usual, almost heavy with the weight of everything decided. I have sent orders, Valoria said softly. Solaris and human scientists will meet in secret labs to combine our technology. Our fleets will train together. Our defenses will merge. Elias nodded. It's the only way. She stepped closer, looking at him with an expression he hadn't seen before. Something softer. Something honest. When you pointed at me that day, she said, I thought it was foolish. I thought it was defiance. But now I understand. Elias met her gaze. What do you understand? That you did not choose me, she said. You challenged me. To choose myself. Elias felt something warm in his chest. A connection. A shared purpose, Valoria continued. The council sees you as a danger. But I see you as the first person who ever spoke to me as a leader. And as a person. He didn't know what to say. So he simply nodded. A soft light glowed from the holographic sky above them. What happens next? Elias asked. Valoria faced the stars. Next, we prepare for war. Next, we show the Vorn that we are not separate worlds, but a united force. She looked back at him, her eyes bright and steady. And next, she said quietly, we walk this path together, equal allies. Elias felt the truth of her words echo inside him. They had crossed boundaries that no Solaris and no human had crossed before. Trust had been formed, respect had been earned, and something stronger was beginning to rise between them, a bond built not by ritual, but by choice. A guard entered the observatory. Your Majesty. The fleets await your command. Valoria nodded and turned to Elias. Come with me, she said. You will stand at my side when we begin this alliance. He followed her out of the observatory, through the glowing halls, and toward the command room where the future of both their species would be decided. The path ahead was dangerous. War was coming. But neither of them walked alone anymore. Humanity and Solaris would stand together. And for the first time in centuries, the Queen of Solara IX walked forward not as a symbol trapped by tradition, but as a leader who chose her own destiny. And Elias walked beside her, ready to face whatever the galaxy brought next.